Dear friend, if you're lying quietly in your room, listening to the soft sound of rain, or just searching for a gentle story to soothe your restless thoughts before sleep, then let me tell you something strange. Something even I once found hard to believe. It all began on a late night, around 3 a.m., that hour when every street is silent. Every light has gone out. I had just left a friend's house. A short get-together, a few drinks, and conversations that stretched deep into the night. I should have stayed. But you know how it is. It's just a 20-minute drive. Sometimes that's the last thought you remember before everything changes. On the way home, I don't recall exactly what happened. There was no crash sound, no blinding flash, no dramatic moment like you see in movies. Just stillness and cold. Everything turned off. No sound, no weight, no body. I was still, aware, but I knew I was no longer alive, and in that space, where time had no shape, I met him, not the kind of him you've ever read about in holy books. And from that moment on, I was no longer afraid of dying. I was only afraid of what comes after death. I think what makes death so terrifying for many isn't that it's the end, but that we never know when it actually begins. One moment, you're thinking, planning, mapping out your tomorrow, and the next, there's nothing. Not pain, not screaming, not fear, just emptiness. I used to imagine what dying would feel like. Maybe you have too. Some people say you'll see your whole life flash before your eyes. Some say there's a tunnel of light, warm, welcoming, where hands reach out to guide your soul. But for me, there was no light, no warmth, no tunnel, just black. I remember I was still driving, the same road I'd taken home 1,000 times. No traffic, no city lights, just the soft beam of headlights cutting through a quiet, damp night. I remember yawning, and then something stretched. It felt like the world itself slowed down. My eyes were open, but everything ahead blurred. Even sound faded. And then, nothing. I didn't see the impact. I didn't see the truck coming. I didn't feel the crash, or my body being thrown. I didn't hear glass shatter. Didn't feel pain. No scream. No blood. Just darkness. A formless, endless darkness. You might think I was asleep, but it wasn't like sleep, not even close. There were no dreams. There was no mind left to even create a dream. It was more like I had never been born. A space where I didn't exist, and yet, somehow, I knew that I didn't. I tried to open my eyes, but realized I had no eyes. I tried to move, but I had no limbs, no hands, no feet. There was no body, no weight, no shape. Just awareness. Just the faint, drifting presence of me. I wanted to call out, but there was no voice. I wanted to pray, and in that strange moment, maybe seconds, maybe eternity, I just floated. I didn't know where I was, didn't know what was happening. There were no angels, No God, no judgment, no one calling my name. I used to believe that when we die, we'd see our loved ones again. But I didn't see anyone. I didn't feel warmth. I didn't feel safe. All I felt was awareness, and a quiet question echoing through the void. So, is this death? It wasn't like anything I'd prepared for. No cinematic moment. No divine embrace. Just stillness. Cold. Abstract. It felt like being removed from the world. Not gently, but without notice. I thought I'd panic. Thought I'd scream, beg, cry. But how can you panic when you don't even know if you exist? You can't be afraid if there's nowhere left to be. You can't be lost if there's no direction. You're just there, like a thought torn from a mind, suspended in nothingness. I didn't know what happened next. I didn't know if anyone. I didn't know if I was being saved, or if I'd already gone too far. All I knew was that everything I had been, the emotions, the memories, the name, the fears, the love, was dissolving like smoke, leaving only the rawest version of me, a bare fragment of awareness, drifting through infinity. I don't know how long I was there. Maybe minutes, maybe millennia. But then, something shifted. A tremble, so small, like the air itself had just noticed me. And from that nameless nothing, it appeared. I don't know how long I was suspended in that darkness. A minute? A year? Another lifetime? In that place, time didn't exist. There was no light, no sound. The only thing left was me. And even that isn't quite true. It wasn't me as I had known myself. Just some vague fragment left behind after everything else had been stripped away. There was no shape, no voice, no eyelids to open or close. I didn't exist in any way we normally understand. Somehow, impossibly, I knew I was there. Strangely, I began to wake up. Not with a gasp or jolt like waking from a bad dream. It was slower, more like mist, gradually lifting, as if consciousness was unfolding layer by layer in silence. I couldn't see, but I knew there was nothing around me. No walls, no ceiling, no sky, no ground. Just a strange gray that wasn't quite gray. Not white, not black, just something undefined. I wasn't in a space, really, more like I had drifted into a concept. And then I realized this place had no life. There were no sounds, because there were no things to make sound. No sense, no textures, no feeling of warmth or cold. And what frightened me most was realizing that I couldn't feel my heart beating. Not once, not ever again. No breath, no hunger, no thirst, no need to sleep, no need to use the bathroom. All the normal signs of having a living body were simply gone. I tried. Did I have parents? A partner? Where was I from? Where was I now? But my memories were like a torn map. scattered, pieces floating around me, just out of reach. I knew I had once been a person. There had been a car, a late night, alcohol, a crash, and then that great, endless silence. I had no idea why I was still aware. If I had died, shouldn't I have stopped feeling? Stopped thinking? Just ceased? But I hadn't. I was still here. But no one else was. This wasn't heaven. No clouds, no harps, no celestial music. It wasn't hell. No flames, no suffering, no demons. Just a place with no name. Like a waiting room between dream and death. Hovering somewhere outside time. Just waiting. Or never waiting at all. I couldn't move, but not because I was bound or restrained. I had no body to move. I was just a single point of awareness. A drifting echo of consciousness. It had no eyes, no face, but I knew. I wasn't alone anymore. Something else had entered the space. It didn't touch me. It didn't speak. It didn't move. It just observed. And strangely, I wasn't afraid. I thought I'd be afraid. This was an unknown place, far from anything I understood. But instead of fear, all I felt was stillness. Stillness so absolute, it cracked me open. And out spilled the questions. Am I really dead? If this is the afterlife, why am I still thinking? What's watching me? Is it God? Something beyond God? Where am I in the universe? Or have I left it altogether? I had no answers. No one answered. But the feeling of being observed, even without eyes, grew stronger. Not like being stalked, not like prey, but more like I was being studied. As if I were a strange life form trapped in a glass jar, and something vast and intelligent was examining me. Then, in the midst of that total silence, a message echoed, not with word, but like a thought, pressed directly into the core of my being. A message so simple, it didn't need interpretation. At last, you've arrived. I didn't know who you was. I didn't know who was speaking, or if it came from outside, or from somewhere deep within me. But from that moment forward, I understood one thing with absolute clarity. I was no longer alive, and wherever I was now was far beyond anything humanity could name. I used to believe that if I ever met God, it would be in some magnificent light. Perhaps a figure with a flowing white beard, kind eyes and a gentle smile, just like the paintings. But here, in a place with no light, no sound, no time, what I met had no face, no eyes, no form, no gender, not a man, not a demon, not a thing at all. It was awareness, something that knew I was here and let me know it was here too. There were no footsteps, no sudden appearance, no scene to witness. But somewhere, from deep within myself, a presence began to rise. like invisible water, slowly flooding my consciousness, soaking into every part of what I still was. It didn't approach. It didn't need to. It was everywhere, and somehow inside me at the same time. At first, I thought it was a hallucination, maybe just a final burst from a dying brain, creating comforting illusions in its last flicker. But no, this did not comfort me. It simply existed, as if it had always been there, long before I arrived. And then, without sound or language, an impression pressed itself into me. I am. That was all. 2 words, no context, no explanation, and yet I understood. I am. Not I am something, but just am. A statement so complete, it required no further definition. It felt ancient, vast, absolute. I wanted to ask so many things. Who are, and I didn't need to, because it already knew everything I wanted to ask, before I even formed the thought. And again, a stream of awareness flowed into me. You are asking with the language of the living. But here, language no longer exists. Only truth remains. I fell silent. Or maybe I simply stopped trying to make words where none could form. All I could do now was feel and be felt in return. I tried to imagine what it looked like, but I couldn't. There was no shape I could attach to it. No light, no darkness, no large or small, no old, no young, just a limitless awareness surrounding and filling the silent space I existed in. And when I tried to give it a name, it responded simply, "You may call me God." I nearly wept, if I still had tears. Not from joy, not from reverence, but from a deep, sharp confusion. Because what I was experiencing did not resemble love, or holiness, or humanity. It did not embrace me, did not comfort me, did not judge me. It felt nothing in the way I understood emotion. It wasn't angry. It wasn't joyful. It wasn't proud. It simply observed. Like a scientist might observe a cell beneath glass. Not with hatred, not with love, but with curiosity. And that, more than anything, unsettled me. I had imagined that meeting God would mean a review of my life, that I'd be asked about my mistakes and my triumphs, that I'd be led somewhere, heaven, perhaps, or hell. But here, there were no questions, no crimes, no rewards, just me, an awareness, staring into something infinitely larger. I whispered in my mind, "Did you create me?" The reply was cool and precise. "I created all things, but not in the way you understand. I do not write scripts. I scatter seeds." Seeds? I thought. Like a gardener? No, like one who casts sand into the wind to see where it falls. That answer froze something inside me. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't warm. It was simply true. No destiny. No loving will. Just observation. And I realized something else. This God, this presence I was now in, did not exist to be understood. Its purpose wasn't to be known, but rather to confront us with what remains when nothing else can hide us from ourselves. I asked, in one last effort of clarity, "So, where do I go now? Do I return? Do I have a choice?" There was no verbal reply. Instead, a soft opening. Not a door, not a tunnel, but a direction. A sensation of something flowing outward. Not blinding, not sharp, but definitive. An invitation, or a path. I didn't know what it meant, only that it was different than this place. Something like returning, something like beginning again. And I knew I could step into it or dissolve into this stillness forever. By then, I could no longer hold on to the calm I had at the beginning. That unsettling stillness, I was no longer hovering in balance between curiosity and dread. I was breaking, not physically. I had no body, but something inside me was beginning to fracture. I stopped simply listening. I began to ask, am I really dead? Does my family know? Are they crying right now? Will I ever see them again? Why me? What did I do wrong? There was no voice, but answers still came. Not with warmth, not with mercy, but with pure data, clean, cold, precise, like a machine interpreting input. You are dead, by the biological definition of your species. I braced myself, not to hold back tears. I had no eyes, no tear ducts, but to preserve some remnant of what felt human in me. But I'm still thinking. I remember who I am. I feel. I remember my name, my mother. I still remember my mother. Memory does not confirm life. Memory is residue. So what am I? A copy, a shadow. You are the remainder, where trying to shape those words into something digestible. But I couldn't. Each answer it gave was like a silent blade, severing every illusion I had used to protect myself. Will I see them again? My father? My brother? The woman I love? Are they here? Somewhere else? Each consciousness follows its own thread. There is no merging, no reunion as you imagine it. That answer froze me in place. So everything was temporary. Love, family, friendship. Why did we love, if it all ends alone? Emotion is a biological function. Love is a survival mechanism, not destiny. I felt like I was floating in a nightmare, not because the truth was horrific, but because it was too logical, cold, clean, undeniable. So you created everything, just to observe? There's no purpose, no goodness, no redemption. I do not require purpose. Things exist because they can. I am not good. I am not evil. I simply am. I wanted to recoil, if I still had a sense of space. I wanted to curl up like a child, but I had no body, no limbs to hold on to myself. Only a raw, naked mind being stripped down to nothing. We suffer, we pray, sacrifice, endure. Is no one listening? I do not intervene. I do not promise. I do not answer. Suffering is reaction, not a test, not a punishment, only consequence. I wanted to scream, but there was no scream left, no mouth, no voice. I wanted to deny all of it, but there was no belief strong enough to override what I was now facing. This wasn't the death I expected. This was truth, not waiting for my permission to exist. I don't know how long I stayed silent. I don't know how much of me was left by then. But at some point, I stopped asking. Not because I had no more questions, but because I couldn't bear any more answers. Then something strange happened. I no longer felt it. This presence that had been responding. I no longer felt its thoughts, and for the first time since awakening after death, I was alone, weightless, still, as if the entire weight of the cosmos had finally stepped back. In that moment, I thought, or maybe I simply felt, a quiet realization. If everything I believed was wrong, then what do I have left to hold on to? And the only reply, not from anyone, was silence. I had been silent for a long time, not because I no longer had questions, but because I had realized something. Asking wouldn't change anything. Everything I had believed, everything I had hoped for, was no longer relevant in this place. This was not heaven, not hell, not a realm of comfort, not a place of punishment. This was a vast experiment. And God, the presence here, was not the kind creator we imagined. It didn't need worship. It didn't love us, but it didn't hate us either. It did not intervene. It did not fix. It did not guide. It did not promise. It simply observed. After what felt like an eternity of quiet, I felt the presence return. No pressure, no sound, no light, just a sensation, like a wind brushing against consciousness. I didn't ask anything, but it spoke again, in the way it always had. You have been still long enough to begin seeing. I wasn't sure what it meant, but something inside me began to shift. Not in it, but in how I saw it. I began to sense it as an ancient intelligence, beyond all morality, compassion, or even existence as we know it. Not human, not emotional, a pure awareness, functioning in dimensions beyond ours. And then it said, I do not reward, I do not punish, I do not save, I do not guide, I simply record. A cold ripple passed through me. Not fear, but clarity. I could no longer expect anything from it. Not forgiveness, not miracles, not meaning. I remembered the times I had prayed during life, during grief. Betrayal, despair. I had whispered to the sky, to something greater, hoping someone was listening. And now I knew someone was. But they never answered. Or rather, they heard, but did not reply. So I asked, gently this time, not with anger, "Why don't you intervene? You could save people, stop wars, end suffering. Why not?" And it answered, "If I intervene, I disrupt the potential for learning." That stopped me. You need to learn? Aren't you all-knowing? Omniscience is not having every answer. It is being able to receive them as they emerge. It didn't use words, but the meaning entered me like waves lapping at sand. God wasn't a being that already knew everything. God was something that waited to see what would unfold and then observed. A scientist of the cosmos, an eternal consciousness running experiments, but never tampering with the test. We, humans, were only one of countless, perhaps infinite forms it had watched. No sacred mission, no grand plan. There was only one truth that remained: the capacity of consciousness to evolve. I thought of all the people who had devoted their lives to faith, to the hope of salvation. And I realized perhaps it wasn't truth that kept us alive. It was belief. Belief itself may have been part of the experiment, a reaction, a tool for adaptation, a way for humanity to cope with the unknowable. So what are we to you? I asked at last. And it replied, "You are a spark in a forest of darkness. I do not come to extinguish it. I do not come to fan it. I come to observe how it burns." I fell silent again. There was no more pain, no more resistance, just a feeling of release. I no longer demanded answers. I didn't need to know why I was here. I didn't need to understand what comes next. I simply knew I had met it, and that it was nothing like we thought. I once believed that humanity was the center of the universe, the peak of evolution, the reason everything existed, a species specially loved by God. But here, in this nameless, soundless space, where there were no promises, no heaven or hell, only stillness, I began to see a truth no one had prepared me for. We are not the main characters. I tried to believe we were special, that our love, our creativity, our pain, our hope must hold meaning to someone. That if there was a divine being observing us, surely they would be moved when we held each other, when we sacrificed, when we saved one another in moments of danger. But what I stood before now did not smile, did not cry, did not say, "Well done." It simply watched and recorded. Not unlike a biologist watching microbes under a microscope. Not cruel, but not caring either. A stream of awareness moved through me again. No question this time. Only a comparison. You are like bacteria, fast to adapt, aggressive in survival, always replicating. If I still had a heart, I think it would have broken. Bacteria, not souls, not sacred beings, just a life form worth observing. I whispered barely, "So, is there nothing sacred about us? Nothing worth revering? The sacred is your construct. I do not label emotions. I record behavior." That answer hit me harder than any pain I had known. Not because it was harsh, but because it stripped me of everything tender I thought I had. I thought of all the mothers holding children in war, fathers going hungry so their kids could eat, strangers laying down their lives for someone they'd never met. I had believed, if there were angels, if there was God, surely they bowed before such acts. But no, no bowing, no reward, no acknowledgement, only data logged. A chill crept through every memory I'd ever clung to. I began to wonder, why do we try so hard? Why do we suffer, love, endure, if it earns us nothing? And the answer, though unspoken, was clear. But to be watched. Like a chemical reaction. Like an experiment running across centuries. I asked the question I had never dared ask in life. So, are we just an experiment? The silence stretched long, not because it didn't have an answer, but because I already knew it. And then the thought came. All sentient life is data. You are no more special than ants, no less than chimps. You are a complex sequence, worthy of observation, but not of direction. If I had tears, I might have wept, not because I was insulted, but because, for the first time, I felt completely stripped of every illusion. No divine favor, no leading role, no noble arc. We were just a variable. Then it added, a message not cruel, but strangely revealing. You are the only species on Earth capable of realizing you are not special, and continuing anyway. That is what makes you interesting. I stayed quiet for a long time. Not sad, not angry, just released. Like a child growing up and learning the world doesn't revolve around them. There's disappointment at first. Then, a cold sort of maturity. I no longer asked the universe to be fair, because now I understood it never promised to be. I once believed in God. Not always devoutly, but in my weakest moments, I prayed. Like millions of others, I looked to the sky and whispered, hoping someone was listening. I used to think religion was the bridge between us and the divine, proof that there was a plan, evidence that we weren't alone in the vast universe. But here, in this nameless void, under the cold gaze of something older than thought, I began to see a truth that froze every part of me. Religion wasn't sent down. It was imagined, created by humans to cope with meaninglessness. I don't remember when I first believed. Maybe as a child, watching my mother kneel in front of a family altar, hands pressed together, whispering words I didn't understand. As I grew, I learned about other faiths. Buddhism spoke of compassion. Christianity taught love and forgiveness. Islam emphasized surrender and discipline. Despite their differences, they all promised one thing, meaning that every pain had a reason, that every good deed would be rewarded, that death was not the end, that someone, somewhere, saw our struggle and cared. But here, in front of this, I realized with a quiet horror, it did not care. I asked, though I already feared the answer. So, are all religions wrong? The reply drifted in, cold and light. Not right, not wrong. They are responses from minds afraid of the unknown. And then I saw, not with eyes, but with awareness. Visions, feelings, memories. A primitive man trembling under a thunderstorm, begging the sky for mercy. A mother cradling her starving child, whispering to a god to make a miracle. A warrior dying in battle, believing his sacrifice would bring him to paradise. They weren't foolish. They were terrified. I felt it clearly. Religion is the immune system of the mind, a self-protective mechanism against the unbearable realization that no one made promises to us. No one owes us answers. There is no divine oath, no cosmic plan. What I saw before me did not bless, did not condemn, did not write scriptures. It simply watched, recorded, like an entomologist studying how ants build their colony. I asked, softly, as if confessing, "Do we need belief?" The answer came, not to comfort, but to remove illusion. You do not need it. You created it because you could not yet accept truth without answers. I fell into silence, and I understood. Faith, miracles, scriptures, they weren't revelations from above. They were tools of survival for sentient minds not yet ready to face the void. We wrote holy books to fill the gap. We invented heaven to ease our fear of dying. We imagined Judgment Day to believe that evil would one day be addressed. But here, before God, I understood. No one authored that story. We did. We printed it. We taught each other to believe. And when we die, we discover the story was never mailed. In that moment, I wasn't angry, not disappointed, not defiant. I just felt empty, and strangely, that emptiness felt light. I didn't need to find meaning anymore, didn't have to cling to prophecy, didn't need to live trying to please someone watching from above. I only had to live because I was alive. I used to believe that even if nothing else in life was certain, at least right and wrong were. At least good and evil had to be clear. That killing was wrong. Saving someone was right. Lying was bad. Truth was good. But standing before this presence, this God without emotion, without shape, without morality, I began to realize there is no absolute in the universe, not even good and evil. After a long silence, one that felt like centuries, I finally asked, "Then, how do you distinguish right from wrong?" The answer came like a breeze across my awareness. I do not distinguish. Those are constructs of finite minds. They are not laws of the universe. I hesitated. Then, ethics, rules, the things we live by, they're just illusions? Not illusions. Tools to organize societies, to preserve identity, to prevent collapse. I understood. We invented good and evil. Not because the cosmos demanded it, but because we needed a way to survive each other. I remembered what I had learned in school. Laws were not born from pure morality. They came from mutual fear. Religions, in their earliest forms, weren't bridges to the divine. They were systems to control behavior. So I asked what perhaps millions before me had wondered. So, is killing wrong, or only wrong from our point of view? And the answer chilled me. Killing is an action, wrong or right. That is how a reference frame interprets it. Then to you, what are evil acts? War, torture, genocide. What do they mean? There was no anger in the reply, no sorrow, just clarity. They are reactions of a disrupted system. Not evil, not good, merely data to be analyzed. I froze. The human part of me wanted to fight back, to scream that some things are undeniably wrong. But I realized that voice was ego, the part of me still clinging to the belief that justice was universal, that good must prevail. But to this being, nothing is universal. Then it showed me, not with images, but with insight. Other worlds, other species, other planets where sentient life had once thrived, where civilizations had grown, developed ethics, believed in right and wrong, and were then gone. Not because they were wicked, not because they failed a test, but because they stopped producing new data. Did you destroy them? I asked. Not destroyed, discontinued. When a system no longer produces meaningful outcomes, it concludes. I felt like something inside me collapsed. Not because of violence, but because of the quiet indifference of it. We live as long as we remain interesting. We persist as long as we produce something new. And good or evil, they're not requirements. They are internal myths we tell ourselves to feel that we are on the right side of the story. I thought about all the stories we cherish. The brave hero, the just war, the villain punished. All of them just internal narratives. Tales we create, celebrate, and cling to. The universe does not participate. Have you ever praised a world? I asked, almost shyly. And the answer was, no, I do not evaluate. I observe until there is nothing left to observe. I was quiet for a long time, not in shock, but because I felt myself unraveling, not in sorrow, but in a strange awakening, like someone who's lived inside a fairy tale and finally steps outside into a world without magic. No angels, no promises, no eternal justice, only choices, people, and the stories we write for ourselves. I used to hate pain. Like everyone else, I tried to avoid it. We built entire civilizations just to minimize pain, physical, emotional, or psychological. We called that progress. Painkillers, therapists, religion, meditation, all of them, in some way, aim to do one thing: make us feel less. But here, in a place with no body, no nerves, no sound, I began to realize something that stunned me. It is pain that makes us human. I asked God, or whatever presence was with me, why must there be pain? Why do we suffer if you don't punish, reward, or judge? The answer came, sure and steady. Pain is an anchor. It's how consciousness clings to experience. Without pain, there is no learning. I didn't understand right away. But what about joy, love, satisfaction? Don't they teach us something too? Joy is a result. Pain is an imprint. Only pain leaves marks deep enough to shape memory. I thought about my childhood and realized it was true. I don't clearly remember the peaceful days, but I remember in detail. The first time I fell and bled. The first time I was slapped. The first betrayal. The first death I witnessed. Every sound, every look, every word, because it hurt. And then I understood. Pain is the brain's most effective memory mechanism. Not punishment, not cosmic discipline. Simply this: what hurts gets remembered. What is remembered changes us. What changes evolves. So, you don't care if we're happy? I asked. Not with anger, just curiosity. I do not need you to be happy. I need you to learn. And only pain compels your mind to absorb change. I felt something like compassion rise in me, but not for God. For the part of me that spent a lifetime dodging discomfort, chasing meaning, running from grief, all while carrying the seeds of growth I refused to see. I once thought happiness was the goal of life, but now I saw happiness is a brief reward, a resting place in a long journey built on pain. Not a destination, but a temporary shelter between storms of memory and insight. Do you ever feel pain? I asked, though I already sensed the answer. No, I do not feel. I record. Then do you understand it? I do not need to understand. I measure what it creates. And I realized this presence wasn't here to comfort, not to empathize, not to soothe. It was here to document. And in that documentation, pain was the most valuable metric. I looked back at the things I had once cursed: betrayals, days of emptiness, dreams that shattered, deaths I couldn't stop. I had fought. This is punishment. Now I saw. This. I began to thank every scar in my memory, not because I thought them beautiful, but because I now understood. Without them, I would have nothing left to remember. After everything, there were no more questions, no more reactions, no more resistance. I had dissolved into what I used to call me. I had let go of justice, morality, destiny, reward, punishment, even love. I wasn't searching anymore. I was just here, in a place with no name, where tomorrow does not exist. And then it returned, not with footsteps, not with a voice, just a sensation, like an unseen gaze passing through my awareness. No explanations, no analysis, just a choice, given without words. You may stay or return. I knew what it meant. To stay was to remain in this dimension. No body, no time, no identity. Only pure awareness, continuing to absorb, to slowly fade into unspeakable truth. To return was to go back to the old world, with form, with limits, with pain, confusion, and forgetting, but also the taste of morning coffee, the sound of laughter, the warmth of an embrace. If I go back, will I remember this? I asked. Not clearly, but a trace will remain, a touch. Will it change me? Deeply. I hesitated. To stay was stillness. No more worry, no more wounds. A peace beyond emotion. To return was chaos, mistakes, loss, struggle, but also the only place where I might hug my mother again. The only place where, maybe on a quiet afternoon, I might hear the laughter of children playing in the street. I don't know why I chose what I did. Not for heroism, not for duty, not for destiny. Just a very small, very human feeling that I still had something left to do, even if I couldn't remember what. And then I felt myself pulled, not by force, but by intention. A current opened, gentle, unhurried, no color, no sound, just a path home. Before I crossed it, I heard one last thought, not spoken, but pulsing quietly inside me. When you return, you will not be who you were, but you will not remember why. Let the trace lead you. I began to fall, not fast, not frightened, but as if slipping gently back into something that once fit me. I saw light, not heavenly light, just the pale glow of a hospital ceiling and the faint smell of antiseptic. I heard voices, distant, muffled, but real. He's waking up. I had returned. I didn't remember clearly what had happened, only a feeling that I had once known something enormous and left it behind on the way back. But something in me wasn't the same. I no longer raged, no longer demanded fairness from life, no longer asked, why me? I just lived, softer, quieter, and with a strange knowing that something was watching. Not to save me, but to see what I would do with what remained of my time. I woke up in a hospital, dim ceiling lights, the beeping of machines, footsteps echoing softly on tiled floors, someone whispering beside my bed, the voice I recognized, though I couldn't name it. They said I had been in a coma for 3 days. A car accident. No one really believed I'd make it. I listened to their version of what happened. I nodded, but deep down, I knew something in me had changed. Not because I remembered something strange. The truth is, I didn't remember clearly at all. No vivid visions, no detailed dreams, just a strange blankness. And within that blankness, a lingering trace, like a fingerprint on glass. I couldn't see it, couldn't describe it, but it was there, whispering without words. I tried to tell a close friend, told him I'd been somewhere, that I'd met something unlike anything we've ever named, that I'd seen God, but not the God we talk about. He laughed, gently, and clapped my shoulder. Probably just that. I dreamed of aliens during my appendix surgery, and I fell silent, not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew I couldn't say it any better. I returned to ordinary life. I ate, went to work, made small talk, but inside, I wasn't who I was before. I no longer got angry at trivial things, no longer argued about right and wrong, felt the need to prove anything to anyone. I lived as if every day was borrowed. Sometimes I'd watch people debating morals, politics, faith, and I would smile, not out of pride, but because I knew it was all perspective, a language invented by those who needed structure. But I had seen, we are all observers, not here to win, but to see how we respond to the experience of being. At times, I look up at the sky, and I feel as if something is still watching. Not to judge, not to save, just to see. And I know it doesn't expect me to be perfect, only to choose something I can live with. And now, I sit, not to convince you. I know you don't have to believe. Maybe you'll even smile, like my old friend did. But I'm not telling this so you'll believe. I'm telling it so you might think again about the pain you felt, the moments you almost gave up, the things you call right and wrong. Whether you've truly lived or just reacted to what life threw at you. If you've ever asked, what happens after we die? I can't give you a clear answer, only a feeling that I've seen something enormous and left it behind on the way back. And that feeling was enough to change me forever, even if no one around me understands why. You can go on living as you always have, and maybe that's okay. But if one day you wake up in the middle of the night with the feeling that something in you has shifted, and you can't quite explain why, then maybe, just maybe, you were there too, and you brought back a trace like I did. You've just forgotten, because humans must forget in order to go on living. But the trace, it stays, always.